Danielle with the Motivity Podcast. First off, thanks for listening. Thanks for being on the show. Today we have Lakita on the show, and hi, Lakita.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So Lakita and I both work at Cisco. We come from somewhat similar backgrounds, not somewhat similar, not really similar, but we both focus in collaboration, and we both fell into that one of the pillars from Cisco, which is our collab pillar. Um, and we both have a passion for communication, for seamless communication. So we're going to talk through today where Lakita came from, how she ended up in that pillar of collaboration. Another piece is that she also loves the networking side. So we're going to explain a little bit what the difference is and how important networking and collaboration is. And thirdly, we're just going to talk about, why a unified approach to collaboration is so important, and what does that truly mean to the customer, right? And how do you
Yeah.
solve, those problems or those business outcomes? So Lakita, tell us a little bit how you got into information technology when, this, this is a couple years ago. I'm going to say a couple, but, this, sector of, having a degree, what did that mean back then? And how did you stumble upon information technology? Take us there first.
Yeah, sure. It was definitely something I stumbled upon. I was 8 when I got my first computer, and I think that really started it all for me. And so I remember, that Tandy 128K, and I'm probably aging myself now. And it came with this ginormous book to learn BASIC. And I started teaching myself the basic programming language. And, I would just spend hours on that. And there were limitations, of course, with what a 128 computer could do. I mean, I have more than that in my smartphone now. I mean, a floppy disk has more than that. Um,
And you're talking
and
about,
so,
right? Like how much storage
yeah,
you have in your phone. The
yeah.
cloud wasn't available. You couldn't move any data to the cloud then. So
Exactly. I mean, this computer was even like pre-floppy disk, so we're really going back. But I loved it, and I loved spending time on it. I loved figuring out what I could do, but there was also a limitation, with technology back then. And I think that limitation is what kind of whet my appetite for, I want to do more. I would play games, and I could only go so far, and I wanted to go far as my imagination could carry me, not as far as the games that I could go. So I wanted to, be a computer programmer. And somewhere along the lines, I decided I wanted to join the Army. And so growing up, anybody asked me what I wanted to do, I was going to be a computer programmer and join the Army.
at what age did you know this? I just
That was
want,
at 8. That was at
at
8.
8 years old. Oh,
Yes.
at 8 years old, I had no idea what I was doing in life, but okay. That's
No, and
awesome.
it pretty much stayed there. And it's at some point I stumbled across, fast forward through high school, I stumbled across Rochester Institute of Technology. It was one of the schools I applied for, and I was accepted there. And just because of all of that grooming that I had as a kid, I looked at their course catalog, and I was like, computer engineering. Everybody told me I should be an engineer, so that's what I'm going to do. And I go to school, and I
And this
wish
is
I could.
before, information technology was really a major, like, right? It wasn't broken down yet. I mean, so
Exactly.
we lean into this a lot. Uh,
Exactly, exactly. And so, I wish I heard of information technology like right off the bat, but I went into computer engineering because I'm like, hey, people were telling me, oh, she's going to be a computer engineer. I'm saying I'm going to be a computer engineer. There's a major in computer engineer, and I wish I could tell you that my freshman year was a success, but it wasn't. I got there and I was miserable because computer engineering was really electrical engineering with a computer science class, and it was not
you're
what
like,
I
this is not
envisioned.
what I want. I want to fix computers.
No,
I want to dig into it. I want to understand how it works.
a
I
hundred
want all the
percent,
trinkets, right?
100%. And so I did not fare well those first couple of years, and I stumbled across information technology and what that was. And it's really
And
cool
where was
because
this?
this was still at RIT. They actually offered
Okay.
the first information technology program that was like recognized nationwide. So that was pretty cool. And it's such a broad umbrella when you talk about what information technology is, right? Because
We do,
what is
yes.
information? I mean, it's data. And so when you think about information technology, you're thinking about how you present your data, how you transport your data, store it, organize it, secure it, and even interact with it, right? And so, under
Right.
information technology, when I was there, and it's evolved even more since at RIT. I have a cousin that went there, and he has courses. I'm like, I'm jealous. I didn't have those, but they had web development was under IT, systems administration, network administration, security, all of these different
That's
facets of.
and that's present day, or is this when you were there?
That was when I was there. So present day, that has evolved even
Oh,
more.
wow.
They throw mobile applications and gaming development under IT, and database and cloud, and so it just continues to evolve. But when I switched to
It
IT,
really does.
it was a game changer for me. I continued to excel. That wasn't even where I got into collaboration. That didn't happen until after my military career. So I joined the Air Force. So I stayed true to my 8-year-old self.
First of all, this woman was in the Air Force. Like she was like, I want to go to the Army. I want to go to the Air Force,
Yes,
right?
I wanted to
So,
go to the
you
Air
know,
Force.
and I think that lends itself just to give you guys a little background. I get to work with these wonderful individuals, and you hear these stories, but
You're too kind.
no, 1,000%, right? Like I'm in sales, you're an engineer, you keep me honest. I mean, the honest people, right, have these amazing backgrounds, but we don't always talk about it, and we don't always showcase it. So you having that being like, I was in the Air Force is such a great accolade. So
Thank
thank you for
you.
your service, by the
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
way.
And it was it
Yeah.
was it was one of those things where, I did the ROTC program, so I got, the college experience, I got the Air Force experience. I became a communications officer, which what that meant in the Air Force, and that even evolved. When I went into the Air Force, communications was viewed as a support role. And by the time I left, it was an operational role. We had a saying back then, no comm, no bomb. In other words, if you didn't have those communications officers, those planes were not getting off the ground, because when you think of Air Force, you think of
Oh,
pilots and the
like in
fighter
the
jets
hub.
and
So
right,
I mean, I
right.
think of communicate. I mean, communication can mean a number of things, but you're landing planes, you're giving directions, you're telling them what to
Satellite
do as they're up in the
communications,
air.
radio frequencies, the
Wow.
plans, the programs, all of those things, the orders from the general officers that say you need to hit that target, how that order gets from, a general headquarters, to the pilot in that plane, and how those orders flow. That all happens with communications. And so I
Talk
spent time as a
about data
computer.
and workflow and
Yes,
taking,
exactly.
relying on a human to deliver that messaging too. Keep that in mind.
and
I
and
wonder
the
how much it's evolved.
accuracy and the speed of that information, and how important that is for the DoD and the military, and what happens if that information doesn't succeed. Well, I'm not going to assume everybody's seen the movie, but I think it was Crimson Tide with Denzel Washington, where they were on the submarine and they were trying to decide whether they were going to launch a counterattack, and they were like, we don't have orders, and it just created all of this chaos, because they were like, should we go with our previous order? Wait, a new order was coming in, but we only received half of it because our communications were intercepted and they didn't know what to do. And
It's
so we
That's
actually
so far.
study that.
I was thinking about that in such a different level, but that just brought me back to something I was thinking about. I was like just wondering how we not how my mom did jobs. Like, how did people get jobs done when the communication was like a landline, or the communication, you know, um, was code, or it was just such a different era. I was thinking, how would I know to go get my son at school, or just these like minor things that we kind of take for granted. Or I'm running late
Yes.
for a meeting, you just probably show up late, right? Oh, hey, back then it was
Yes. Sorry, I'm
acceptable,
late. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now you actually have to call, you have to text, you have to communicate. I was actually having that thought the other day, that I wonder, I just wonder how much actually got done, or at the time they probably just thought that was
It's
efficiency. That they
exactly. And
defined that as
we
efficiency.
evolve with technology, and when we think about evolution, people think about, the grand scale, but we're evolving with our generations and how we consume technology. When we talk about information technology, that was good enough then, right? And good enough, I'm sure, is something we're going to talk about a little bit more, because that's a term that kind of triggers some different thoughts when it comes to technology. But
Yep.
when I stumbled, it wasn't until after I got out of the military that I stumbled into unified collaboration, right? That I had my first opportunity to touch a call manager. I was still supporting the military. I was supporting Air Mobility Command and their voice over secure IP system. We probably have heard of VoIP, voice over IP. The military
We
loves to
have.
make up acronyms. So we had what we
Did they
called
make up that
VOSIP.
acronym?
Yes, I
No.
believe they did, VOSIP.
No.
Not VoIP, but
Oh.
we put a S in there, so we called it VOSIP, voice over secure IP, because we needed to make
Ooh.
sure our
A hundred
communications were
percent.
secure. Yeah. And so I was the administrator for Air Mobility Command, and I worked on the voice and video systems. And then it just continued to evolve from there. Yeah.
Look, what was video like back then? And then they say video, right? I
Oh
think I
boy.
actually remember these devices, and we're probably going back to the same era of what video looked like back then to what it is now, right? Maybe talk about that for a second. What was video like? How many years ago are we talking? And don't age us on this.
No, we're talking about a
Yeah.
good solid 10 years ago,
Okay.
and
Okay.
the video back then, it was, first of all, you had your voice team, which worked on your phones and your
Yep.
telephony, and you had your video team, and they were completely separate. You pretty much, and I was working with like general officers, right? And so you had these execs that were panicking and sweating bullets, and they were like, he has a meeting in 2 hours, it has to work. And you're in there prepping the room, and you're doing test after test, and you're making sure everything works right. And God forbid, please don't call another command that's using a different technology, because we're not 100% sure if it's going to work. Now
So was
there's
this
just
like
an
conference call
expectation.
lines? Was that
Yeah,
like,
interoperability
yes,
was not a thing.
no,
If
mm-mm,
it wasn't the phrase as we know it today, right? Now
correct.
there's an expectation of interoperability, right?
There is,
You
yeah.
pick up your phone, you dial in a video device. You don't care what's on the other end, right? You want it to work. You want it to be able to communicate. You don't want to have to jump through hoops just to make a system work. And the level of planning that we had to do, calling the other command, what type of system are you using? Okay, well, we're using this. Okay, well, you're going to have to dial in this way,
I
five different
remember
ways to
that.
dial
I
in.
remember you'd have to ask what their
Ah,
was it the SIP address? You would have to how are you connecting the call, and what are you dialing
yeah,
in on, and what if you? I remember. Oh yeah, I mean you're bringing
it
me
was.
back. It was hard,
I
and
think
it
I'm
was
getting like
complicated.
palpitations just
I
thinking
know.
about it again.
And then we used to have people sit on the conference calls to make sure that everyone remember like the white glove service. I actually think
Yes.
when the companies do their quarterly reviews, I think they still use this white glove
Yeah.
conference call person and making sure all the numbers dialed in and they were all connected. And then there was a speaker line. There was a speaker line, and you had to make sure that the speaker knew to call on the right number to bring them through, and they were
Yes.
on the correct mode to talk. But
All of
if
that.
people couldn't hear them, it was a disaster. Oh my God.
It
That
was
talk
it
about
was
stress.
tough.
Right.
It was
It
a
was tough.
nightmare. Yeah. And
And
so when you
imagine if
talk
someone
about,
couldn't get into the call because they
oh
were
my
locked behind a firewall, or they were, the code didn't work and the
oh
code
my
was
gosh.
wrong. And oh my God.
I'm
Akita,
thinking about all of this. How did we stick with it, Danielle? Oh my gosh.
you know what? I think you and I both knew that it would change. And we saw that the communication, or the unified collaboration space, whatever we want to call it,
Yeah.
was changing. And the ease of use of getting into a call stopped becoming a barrier, right? It stopped becoming this, hey, I can't connect call, or I can't get on the system, right? That I think you and I kind of saw that, is that it stopped being that the network was reliable, probably is that the
I
network
mean, a hundred
stopped
percent.
having failure points.
It goes back into that evolution, right? And it brings us into that whole unified collaboration space, right? Of it's no longer, okay for things to be good enough, or at least they shouldn't be, right? The expectations that, we grew up with and matriculated from, no one would accept that now, right? And
No,
so, when we talk about collaboration now, we're not talking about voice or video, right? We're talking about voice and video, right? We expect it to work together, no matter what vendor you're coming from. We just expect it to work. Don't give me, 5 different instructions. Don't give me that book I had as an 8-year-old, like here's the whole book you have to learn, for the different ways that you could possibly have to make a call, right? Like it should be simple. And that was the other thing about information technology is that information technology was crafted and designed with the end user in mind. Not only did I take classes on systems and networking administration, but we also took classes on human factors and tech transfer and things of that nature because even though it's my passion and it's my career, not everybody, there are bankers and investors and doctors and lawyers that rely on this technology just to work, right? They don't care about SIP. They don't care about the URLs. They want to go in and they want to call who they have to call to get their business done, right? And so we need to make sure that our technology is not a burden. And I think that is why I kind of fell in love and stay in this career field and in this vein.
Right. Yes, it shouldn't be a burden. And maybe talk to how, I mean, we work so fluidly and people, ask, well, how is this possible? Maybe talk a little bit about how fluid we do work. Like, I guess in my head, the technology is not a barrier. The
Yeah.
spinning up a WebEx, sending invites, like, or, you could use a number of platforms, but maybe just talk about that, really that unified approach. And what does that really mean?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And so, it shouldn't be a barrier. One thing that I love about like our Cisco platforms is the ability to have that one button to push, that one button to join, right? And so you can integrate with your Outlook calendar, right? Most businesses are using Microsoft for productivity, right? Office products, right? And so you're already using your Outlook calendar. So now these devices integrate with that calendar. So when you have a meeting, you have a pop-up that comes, a little toast pop-up that comes in your lower right hand of your device 5 minutes before your meeting, and it gives you an opportunity to join. I depend on that now. Like if I don't see my one button to push, I might be late. I might miss the meeting, because it's just become one of those other things, right? And so I can join that meeting, and not only am I joining Cisco meetings, but the device we talk about interoperability the my device doesn't care if it's a Zoom meeting, if it's a Microsoft meeting, if it's, a Google Meet, as long as it has that SIP URI, which for all intents and purposes, it's like a phone number, but for video, it knows how to join that meeting, right? And it's like, okay, you have that meeting on your calendar. When we talk about seamless, I'm in Central Standard Time. A lot of the people I work with are on the East Coast, right? They
Yep.
send over calendar invites. That's just automatically translated. So, you say, hey, we're going to meet at 9 o'clock, and you put it on my calendar. My calendar translates it for me, for the right time. So it just takes some of those things where human error can be introduced. It just pulls it out of the equation. And when I think of how companies operate, right? We're no longer just bound to our location, right? And as far as we can
Right.
travel, but we're global. And so if I have, a client that's halfway around the world, right? And maybe English is not their first language, right? We have capabilities in our software for translation, right? There's simultaneous interpretation where you can bring in a translator to translate live. There's closed captioning because accessibility is so important, right? I mean, there are people that are skilled and that are gifted, but maybe they're hard of hearing, maybe they're deaf. Well, there's closed captioning, there's interpretation. I think last time I checked, our devices interpret into 13 different languages and interpret
Correct.
from like over 100 different languages. And I mean, it's continuing to grow, right? And so
And
it's just,
adapt and
and
move.
it,
And
exactly,
it's
exactly,
and the
evolve.
companies are it's evolving. You're right. Yes, it's evolving, which is great. And Lakita, you brought up many powerful plays of the platform, right? Um, what's one feature that you use of the platform often? I have a favorite feature, but what's your favorite feature?
So my
And
my
I
my
probably have like
favorite
three, but Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, aside I don't even consider one button to push a feature. That's like just it's there. I need it. I would say my favorite feature is the WebEx Assistant. And so the WebEx Assistant is now when I talked about information technology, I talked about how we interact, right? And so you're probably familiar with Alexa or Siri, where you can trigger a voice command and you can have it do certain things. WebEx has that capability too, so like even this meeting, and I think this was super important as we're on what I hope is the tail end of this pandemic. I don't even know if it's a pandemic anymore, but the last 2 years have been rough and people have become more germ conscious. And so when we talk about like these touch 10 devices, right, with the touch panel on it, a personal one that I have at home is one thing, but one that's in a shared conference room where different people are touching it, maybe a few years ago that wouldn't have been a big deal, but now, you're like, who touched this, right? And so with the WebEx Assistant, one of the things I can do is I can join a meeting without having to touch anything. I don't want to say the command because I'll trigger about five different devices
Right.
over here, but I
It
say a
goes,
command.
hey,
Yeah. Hey, so and
WEBEX.
so.
Start my
You know,
meeting.
exactly. And you can tell it to join the meeting. You can tell it to end the meeting, turn up the volume, different things like that. It
Yeah.
also transcribes and takes notes, which I think is really cool because I'm a note taker. That's how I learn by reviewing and reading notes, seeing what I missed. But sometimes when you're taking notes, you miss out on something that's being said, and so a lot of the meetings now with the WebEx Assistant can be transcribed. And so now you can go back, you can not only review the recording, but you can review the notes in those recordings. So that's probably
You could
one
even
of my
have it.
top three favorite features.
And I would agree. Actually, that is my favorite feature. And actually, I talked about this from a device standpoint that you could put, our new WebEx Desk Minis, right, in place of a phone because you could enable voice, you can enable calling, and then you don't have to touch the device again. You could give the command to start your meeting.
Yeah.
Just to, piggyback on what Kita's saying, from what her fever feature is. And our endpoints do that. You could talk to them even if you didn't have, deploy the SX10. But the other feature is that when you're looking at the highlights, it actually develops a little, I think it's a one-page slide for you of all the keywords and how many times
Right.
you said it. And you put that into a presentation to, you know, enable these certain words, right? That are so important to the conversation. So it's kind of cool that it gives you like the highlights. I use that functionality a lot, especially us being on so many WebExes, and I've gotten into the mode recently where we record our meetings because people, unfortunately, we're double booked or we're triple booked sometimes. And if
Yep.
an executive can't miss a meeting, one of the best practices I do now is just record it. I send it out, and I'm happy to share it. Right, access it, listen to it at your leisure, listen to it in your car. So obviously that's why I have a podcast because I felt like um, executives are getting busier and busier because people are at home. We're not on the road too, which
Hmm.
we don't really talk about the fact that we're getting so many meetings in, but we're
Yeah.
working at a level that we haven't, I don't think we've ever met this level before because that travel time went away or the executives are not walking in the hallway or, the engineer is still, he's not stuck, fixing devices, right? There's
Yeah.
different management flows that have all taken into,
And
I would say the transition of information technology, the jobs they're different as we spoke about before.
And that's a good point, and I'm going to use this word again. And so, if we had a word cloud, like you will probably see evolve right in the center, because
Yep,
I feel like we're in another stage of our
we are.
workflow evolution, right? Like I said, this pandemic is hopefully at its tail end, but hybrid work, right? Hybrid work and how people work is here to stay, right? And meeting fatigue, right? We because of hybrid work and because people are working from home, we have more of these meetings, right? And we have people working differently. People are starting to transition back to the office. I'm a remote worker. I have I'm pretty comfortable with my at-home setup.
She's
For
got
those that
3
are
TVs, 4 headsets. She's got 6
there's one,
phones.
two, three, four, five, six, seven. I got 7 screens in this room.
She's got
Six
7
cameras.
screens. So if you can't get her, she's then not in her office. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean,
Yeah,
anyone, you'll
right?
see this on YouTube. But she's got every device. She tests device. I can see.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot going on. And so I invested in my work from home setup because I wanted to be comfortable, and I know I spend like a third of my day here. But other people work from home may mean a kitchen. It may mean a shared bedroom. They may not have that space, right? So you mentioned the Desk Mini, and that's one of the thing I love is that we have like devices for every scenario, right? So that Desk Mini, that's perfect. It's portable, 15-inch screen. Hook it up to your laptop. Don't hook it up to your laptop. Use it in the kitchen, use it in the bedroom. It's a cute little device. It has like five
It
different
is
colors, so
cute.
it can go with your
It's cute.
decor.
It's
I mean,
little,
it's
and it registers to the
yeah,
call manager, or it registers to WebEx Hub. And when I say register,
exactly.
guys, I mean you unbox it, we plug it in, connect to your Wi-Fi, ask your admin of your control hub to get you a 16-digit code, and it registers. I mean, it
Yeah.
can't be more simple. I mean, it really
Same
can't be.
feature set, same feature set. Like I'm on one of our WebEx desks right now, and the Mini has that same feature set. It's just portable. The room kits for like the bigger rooms, the huddle rooms, and it just continues to grow, right? Because when we talk about this transition of hybrid work, we have people that are going to be at home and we have people that are going to be in office, and the experience of the people in home, because it used to be, right, the remote workers felt distant, right? It may
Yep.
be when you talk about like in groups and out groups, they may have felt like an out group. Like I know I'm part of the company on paper, but I really don't feel like I'm part of the meeting. And things that honestly I didn't think of, right, that affect the quality of a meeting, like the view, right? If I'm in a conference room and I'm at home and you have this 6 foot table, right, and you have people that are on this other end of the table, and I'm trying to relay an idea, and people are, I can't really see their faces, they're maybe a little bit of a blur. I'm not picking up on their expressions, right? And so that feedback, what does that do? Maybe I shut down. Maybe I'm like, well, I don't know if my feedback is being received, right? And so we have this thing called people focus, which if you're in a conference room, the cameras in our devices are intelligent enough to crop out faces and zoom in. And so now, if you have four or five people in a conference room, instead of seeing the entire room and, all of that, we'll call it wasted space, that's not as important to
Yeah.
the conversation, everybody gets the same amount of real estate on your WebEx. And so I can zoom in, I can see the smiles, I can see the head nods, I can see the agreement or disagreement. So now we're all in this meeting, and because, our devices like our minis are, designed for home or office use, a workspace is where you make it, you're getting that same quality audio, that same quality video, that same one button to push, WebEx Assistant, all of those features are still available to you. And so that's one of the things I see is that in our next phase of evolution. The other with the meeting fatigue is, and I love this about our company, is that we disrupt ourselves, right? Yeah, we're talking about meetings and devices and and how to make your meetings more productive, but at the same time, we're like, hmm, how can we make these meetings more efficient or maybe have less of
Correct.
them, right? And so vidcast is something that I love, right? Because if we're being honest, Danielle, every meeting doesn't have to be a meeting. It's one-way communication, and you just have somebody that needs to deliver communication asynchronously and really doesn't need that feedback right away. Why not record yourself and send it out to people, right? And that's exactly what vidcast does. And what I love about it is the default speed is 1.2, right? And so you can slow it down to real time, but if you have a 10-minute vidcast, by default, it's going to replay at 1.2. So maybe that 10-minute vidcast only takes you 8 minutes to watch. Those seconds
Yep.
matter, right? Those minutes
Those
matter
minutes matter.
when you have a
Yep.
day that's stacked full of meetings and you're telling me now
Like our
I can,
days
like,
today.
are they? Exactly. I can shave a couple of
Today.
minutes off of this meeting now by doing a vidcast. It's just I love it.
But Lakita, we talk about features and we know the features of this platform, but how do you show customers, or how do you help them understand all that they can do? And I think that's where we sometimes, because we know it so well, we think they know it, right? But
Yeah.
they don't work like us. So how do we how do we show them, right, all the features and functionalities, or the how powerful it is? And we didn't even, to be honest, we're this platform can, as we said, is interoperable. So we're not even like saying, hey, you have to do all Cisco from end to end.
Right.
We're just kind of saying, hey, there's ways to work. There's functionalities built in. Take advantage of these features and functionalities. But, I guess we encourage clients to go to our demo sites, right? We encourage them to see it in real time, to play with it, to test it. Like, I guess it's like sometimes the technology is so great and they get scared of it.
Hmm.
But if you could kind of take the suit off, right? Take your barriers off. The technology works. Like lean into it. Like maybe run some tests, run some meetings, see what's working, see what's not working. Oh, this works, that works. Like you kind of need to do a couple test runs, but once it's going, it's gonna go.
Yeah.
And other people follow people. If they see something working properly, they're gonna lean into it. And I guess maybe that's
I think
a
it's,
way we could phrase it. I
yeah,
think because you turn it on and you don't understand, and sometimes you don't have to over engineer. Simple deployments are sometimes better.
exactly.
Like it doesn't have to have all these extra features. The features are there.
Yeah.
Just use them or see if you like them. I guess like we're saying, everybody works differently.
Yeah.
Learn how you want to work, and then the tools can do it. Trust us.
Use
The
what
other cool
works.
thing,
Use what works for you.
yeah,
As a cloud service and serving so many different verticals, right? I mean, we have customers that cover every gamut,
yep,
big,
we do.
small,
I mean, I don't,
retail,
but
health. Yeah, well,
Lakita
you're
does.
mostly health, finance. Everybody works differently, right? Some customers are global, some are not, right? And so I talked about like interpretation earlier. Maybe that's not a feature that resonates with everybody. You don't have to use it, right? It's there.
You're
the
right.
the
You're right. It's there.
velocity of how we roll out features is so incredible. And so one of the things I try to do is really knowing our customers and knowing how they work, right? And so when we have these, what's new and what's coming, we share that information. But also, I try to highlight the ones that, like, hey, you told me about this use case that you were having, or this problem that you were trying to overcome. I think this feature that's coming out, could help with that. So I think a lot of it has to do with really understanding, how people work. It really starts with that relationship, right? And I think um, going back to kindergarten, show and tell. There's something to be said for that, right?
That's so cute. I love it. Right. So take the time and learn the
Yeah,
advancements.
yeah,
Like it's there. You talk about what could we turn on? There's a lot to turn on. There's a lot to do.
yeah.
Right. That's a great
And
point.
for customers, that can, I am so ready, and I know some customers have already done this, to show people our New York office and what we've done in there, and how we've just turned that into a smart office space, and that entire experience. And it's not just
We
a
took
a
that office
WebEx
and turned it on
experience.
his head.
Oh my gosh, I mean, it's amazing,
We took
right?
it, we flipped it, and then we put it back down. And we're like, this is how life is. And this is how
Yes.
work life balance happens. And this is how you flow. And this is how you don't have to worry if there's a conference room. And this is how if you just have your cell phone, how you start a meeting. And this is how you do it. This is how it is.
Because
And
again,
this
we've
can do it.
evolved. We've evolved, right? No
Yes.
longer is it Cube City where everybody has a desk assigned, because 80% of those desks are empty because people are working remotely, working from home, whatever the case may be, right? And so we have to get smarter about how we use those spaces, right? And so that was part of hybrid work. And so, I love to talk about that office, showcase that office. And it's not just information technology. It's not just the people that love collaboration like us that benefit from that, but it's the HR people, it's the facilities people, right? That, are
It's
buying
the
the
contact
furniture.
center people.
Exactly.
Contact center folks can work from home now. Come on, guys. I
Yes.
mean, every contact center agent in the world was going to, a big box, and I say a box is a
Yeah,
building, right? And they couldn't work from home. They can work from home now. I mean, that's enablement. I mean, that is amazing because, we need those folks. We rely on those folks, and, IMing them, and, that advancement. But the fact that they can just go work from home, I mean, listen, I guess if someone's listening, the power of the people that can work from home and you enabling their home office, that's a big play.
it is.
That makes you feel like you're connected, right? When your
Yeah.
home office emulates maybe an office, and maybe that's a little lesson learned here. Lakita, two things we didn't talk about. One thing is we have this cool feature no one knows about, but I'll say it, is that you can't hear the baby crying in the
Oh,
background
yes.
or the truck that pulls up or someone's yelling. You can't hear it anymore. So, this background noise issue, you're in a big room and you have a headset on, the people on the phone can't hear the background noise anymore. I mean, that is built in. That is not a hindrance
That's game
anymore.
changing.
That is game changing. And actually,
Yeah.
I had an engineer testing it yesterday, like yelling on the side of his device and said, "Can you hear me?" And I said, "I can't hear a word you're saying." So, I mean, such a cool feature that's built in. The other thing is like, how does voice? Talk about voice. Talk about maybe on-prem or cloud, and why do you work? Why would you work with Cisco? And I hear clients all the time saying, "Oh, I'm going to work with this partner to manage my phone system," and you're like, we make the phone system, right? Like, it's on our network. Just making the
Yeah.
call out. But talk a little about that. Like, you talk about that transition a little bit, and I think from where I sit, I understand the fear of the cloud, except for especially for calling, because it's, my clients, it's their reliability, right? It's
Yeah.
their open, it's, getting a doctor on the line. It comes down to major use cases. But then we say, hey, it doesn't have to be maybe an all or nothing. It could
Mhm.
be, a small approach. Doesn't have to be a big approach, right? You could put some of it in the cloud, right? And that
Yeah.
builds in redundancy. But maybe just talk about how, voice plays into this. And then I want you to also touch on, do we even use voicemail anymore?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, good questions. And
Thank
so
you.
you started with why Cisco, and I'll try to remain as unbiased as possible, right? We
And
all have
yeah,
biases,
we
but I
have
mean,
friends. Listen, we all are friends, and we use other tools. We're not a only Cisco company,
well,
right? We
and that's
use
just
other
it,
platforms
right? From a
for
productivity
services.
standpoint, we have this Microsoft approach, plus Cisco. But when we look at,
And
and
listen,
I've
I
used the
use
term,
Google, but I use
I
Google.
use Google.
We use
Yeah,
Google in my personal world, so I
yeah.
use
I mean,
major
there's
platforms.
a place, right? There's a place for all of those things. And so when I think about, why Cisco for your phone specifically, we talk about voice over IP. We talked about that a lot, and let's break that down. Voice over
Over the internet.
IP,
Over the
over the
internet. So
internet
when yes,
protocol. And
yes.
so, you
Not a
need
POTS
that
line, not a dial number.
exactly.
I mean, it's still a dial number, but it's it's over the internet. I mean, it's connecting to some hub to get the internet
Exactly.
access to make the call. Honestly, I could
Exactly.
say something, and listen, I love Zoom, but Zoom only allows VoIP because VoIP is free. I mean, technically, if
Yeah,
if you have to dial into a number, that phone is a charge. That dial to a number is a charge, and that's a charge to Zoom. So let's just clear that fact up for a second, because I heard that one. And I was like,
yep.
you only could do
Little
VoIP. Yeah, because yeah, it's over the internet, just like you're searching on the web. It's a free
Yeah,
call. Yeah,
little side note, and that's a good point too, is that, when we talk about voice over IP, you have to have that network, right? I mean, we have, we Cisco is started with, networking before voice, right? And so there's a foundation there with the routers and the switches and all of those things that make your internet work, right? We have security stacks and technology, right? When you talk about voice over IP, you want secure communication, right? If you're a doctor or a nurse, you have HIPAA and you have all of these things. You have to make sure that that information is secure. And so, we have the ability, we have the data centers, we have that technology stack. And so, when we talk about why Cisco, for one thing, is that we have a lot of those things under our umbrella. And when it comes to
right.
collaboration, we build the devices, right? And so these devices, when we talk about interoperability, they're going to work. Yes, they will work with, a Teams meeting or any other different type of meeting, because that's important. But when you talk about the feature set and some of those features that we add, those features are going to work better with our devices within our ecosystem, right? When you talk about management, in our control hub, allowing you that single pane of glass view to just be able to manage everything. Right now, I started with Call Manager on prem, right? And when we say on prem, we're just talking about where that machine is, right? Is
Yeah.
it in a a communications closet, on your physical facility, or a data center that you rent out and that you have total
Or it's like a
operational
Nicolo, yeah,
control?
which. however you
Yeah,
deploy the
ex-
hardware, that is obviously up to the
exactly.
enterprise. But the
Exactly.
network
Yep.
that you're connecting to is a Cisco
Exactly.
network. And then,
Exactly.
yes, there's interoperability, but the interoperability brings in a different network. So we can't control the whole experience if you're connecting to another network. And that we see
Right.
a lot. And so
Right.
while, one part of the meeting might be up, another part might not, it's because you're adding in complexity. Or
Right. And that's one of the challenges, right? Is that when we talk about voice over IP over the internet and these global communications, you're touching all of these different points, right? To get from point A to point B. And so when there is a bad experience, it's like, okay, well, where in the network is failing because your quality is only as good as your weakest link, right? And so do you have a bottleneck or anything that's slowing that down, right? And oh my gosh, Danielle, we just don't have time to talk about all the
I know we
technology.
can. I know we. I
you
mean,
know,
Lakita and I. Wow, we really know our. I think. I mean, I kind of know my stuff, but she really knows her stuff. We have
yeah,
a
because
couple
I don't
minutes
even want to
left
get into
too.
Thousand Eyes, right?
I
And how
know.
it covers, and gives you that
Don't
view.
do it.
We're
Don't
not going
go
to talk
there.
about it. We're not.
But talk about just how about we do this? We'll finish up. This is obviously it's been an eye-opening conversation, and we've talked about a million things. But talk to me about when was the last time you checked your voicemail?
How long have I been working here? Oh my gosh, I have not touched my voicemail in months. Um,
Months.
and
I don't even know. I don't know mine.
that's work and personal, right? Like,
That's true.
even on my personal phone, I think I still have a voicemail, but I mean, if somebody wants to get in touch with me, right, send me a text, shoot me a message on WebEx, in
Yeah.
even less
Yeah.
email, right?
Or
Like,
WhatsApp or Instagram or just, you want to get me, send me a
yeah,
message, I
yeah,
mean, that's, I
how
think
we
what we've
communicate
seen.
and
Correct.
yeah, and that's probably, like I think I've said it a few times throughout our time together, and it's probably a good bookend is how we communicate, how we digest information is evolving, right? I still use email, but I don't use email as much. I live in the WebEx app, right? And how I'm messaging people, my groups, I'm flagging and I'm pinning messages and
Yeah.
even on my phone and my personal device. And I even think about my kids and how they consume information. When we grew up watching TV, you probably had to program a VCR. If you
Put
wanted to
that
see
DVD
it,
in. Where's the DVD? Don't
yeah,
scratch
yeah,
the DVD.
TiVo, right?
Right.
VHS and all of those things. My kids consume things on demand, right? Like it's YouTube and
It's on.
Hulu
Yes.
and Netflix, and they don't know about commercials. They never experienced Saturday morning cartoons.
I don't know. Listen, I grew up watching Saved by the Bell. That was like my livelihood. I don't know. My
Yeah,
son,
and if
right, it
you
was
weren't
on at
there when it
7
came on,
a.m. You
you
missed
didn't
it. You
see
missed the
it.
whole thing.
Right,
What about
and so
TiVo? Was it TiVo? What came out
oh my
that you
gosh,
could? Was it TiVo?
that
Did
was
I say that right?
TiVo where you could program.
My
Yeah,
people were loving life when that happened.
yeah,
That was that was kind of the evolution of digital information, right? And
yeah.
having on demand information, and that you could play it when you want, and you could watch what you want, and you can
hmm
silo what you want, right?
Yeah,
So
and as we see those trends, like, in our personal lives, it translates not the same, but there's that evolution translating into our work life too, right? And so we just have to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that and we're seeing how people communicate, how they consume information, how they secure and store information. And we talked about the cloud, and as people become more comfortable with the cloud, right? Because it used to be this mystery, like, oh, I'm not I'm not putting my data in the cloud, right? And people are seeing that it is secure, right? It is a fiscally responsible decision to make as far as how much it costs, operationally when you start talking about capex and all of those things to store your data in the
oh,
cloud.
you're going
And
deep now.
also,
CapEx, offset. I mean, you're
I
killing it
am
now.
and
Killing the
giving people that
conversation.
local survivability, right? Because
There you
at the
go.
end of the day, I don't care how much you tell me my information is going to be secure. There's a level of risk that some industries can't take, right? Hospitals are one of them, right?
They
So
can, yeah. They
how
have
do
to
I
be up.
move? Yeah, so how do I move my infrastructure to the cloud, but I still have that fallback that is going to let me sleep at night, right? When four nines and five nines isn't good enough, how do you give them that local survivability that we need? And so, we have ways of doing that and providing that for them. And it's not an all or nothing, right? I think that's big too, is that it's not you have to be 100% in the cloud, right? You can
No,
start
right. You can
offloading
do a, yeah.
workloads to the cloud, right? Maybe your IT department uses calling, and maybe you move another department, and there's different things that you can do.
So, Lakito, if like 2 minutes left, I love this conversation. I think we need to do another deep dive into this, and maybe
I'd
we
love
should
it.
just even focus on calling. We kind of, we scratched on so many services, but I think what the conversation lent itself to was opening your eyes to the amount of features and functionalities and what you really can do with good technology, right? Like lean into the technology, like learn it, understand it, and then
Yeah,
try to maybe solve workflows or bottlenecks and people not communicating well. I think what we're saying is that everyone can communicate easily, seamlessly, and rely on the networks, whichever company you choose. But and there's outages, stuff happens, like we get it, right? But we do build a ton of the features and functionalities into the system, so you don't have to think, hey, I would like this. Well, it's there. Hey, I want to do this. It's there.
yeah.
But building that workflow, we know it's hard. It's changing companies and having them adapt is tough. Any last words, Lakita? Again, this is the Motivity Podcast with Danielle. I love talking collaboration, but any last words?
I would just say that collab works. Just keep
It
your
does.
eyes on the trends and how things are evolving, and don't be afraid to change. Like you said, Danielle, lean into it.
Lean into it, yeah, and see, let the companies give you the proper demos. Let them like play with the devices. See how easy it is to play. See if there's outages. Let it sit for a day. Have people join your meeting for the day. I mean, you could do a number of ways, I guess, to really test it and showcase it, or come to our One Pen Plaza, play with the system, see how we work. See what's like a day in a life of one of us, or even Microsoft or Google, whoever it is. See how they work, because the workflows are tremendous. They're very powerful. But Lakita, thank you again for
Thank you
being
for
on the
having me.
show. And if you want to get in touch with Lakita or myself, obviously you can find us on LinkedIn. Happy to always have a conversation, or if you just, kind of want to vet some ideas with us. We always love that too. Listen, we're not, I only have 3 accounts, but if someone else wanted to talk to us outside of our accounts, we're happy to do so, right? So
Yeah,
we're all
100%.
all about educating and learning and adapting, and that's not easy. Uh, but I think if you get, good advice and take the advice, right, and I think that's pretty powerful. So, yeah. Anything else?
I can't think of anything. I mean, without going off into another tangent.
I
So we'll
know.
probably
I
we'll
mean,
probably end it there.
Lakita is a strong individual, being in the Air Force, understanding that she wanted to be in information technology. Again, the sector is great. There's a lot
Yeah.
of great people in it. We're all sitting here ready to help you. So thank you, and
Thank you.
have a wonderful day.